You've heard it before. Maybe it came out of the mouth of someone you love. Maybe it slipped through a text message late at night. I guess I just don't matter anymore. And the moment you read those words, something inside you twisted. You felt it, didn't you? That pang in your chest, that sudden guilt, that need to fix it. You started to think, maybe I really was too harsh. Maybe I should call them. Maybe I should explain again. Stop, take a breath, because here's what you need to know. Not every sad sentence comes from sadness. Sometimes it's not pain speaking, it's control, covert control. This kind of manipulation doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't threaten, it implies. It doesn't demand, it makes you feel like you owe. And it's powerful because it hides behind your best qualities, your empathy, your kindness, your desire to make things right. The people who use guilt as a tool know exactly what they're doing. They've learned that if they hint at rejection, you'll rush to reassure. If they act like you've wounded them, you'll rush to apologize. And every time you do, you teach them one thing: guilt works. So today, we're going to change that. Because the truth is, you can't stop people from using emotional bait, but you can stop biting it. And that begins the moment you recognize the pattern. What if, instead of reacting, you paused for 5 seconds? What if you reclaim those tiny moments between their words and your response and use them to wake up instead of give in? That's what we're going to do in this conversation. We're going to break down what covert control really looks like, the exact phrases that hook you, the psychology underneath them, and how to use one simple habit, the 5-second rule, to take your power back without losing your compassion. Because this isn't about outsmarting anyone. It's about remembering that your peace is not up for negotiation. And when someone says, I guess I just don't matter anymore, you'll finally know what's really happening underneath that line. And more importantly, how to respond from strength, not guilt. Here's what I want you to understand. Covert control is not about shouting or demanding. It's about shaping your emotional response so quietly that you don't even notice it happening. It's not the person yelling that drains you the most. It's the one who sighs, withdraws, and makes you feel like the villain until you bend. That's not communication. That's conditioning. Covert control works because it doesn't come through threats, it comes through implications. You feel responsible for someone else's feelings, and your brain jumps in to fix what isn't yours to fix. Let's talk about why that happens. Inside your brain, there's a little alarm system, the limbic system. It's wired to keep you safe, to detect danger, and to restore connection when you feel tension. So when someone you care about acts wounded, your brain interprets that as, I caused pain, I need to repair it. But here's the truth. Not every frown is your fault. Not every silence is your responsibility. And yet, your body reacts as if it is. That's how covert control hooks you. It doesn't force you, it invites you to volunteer. And because you're empathetic, you do it willingly. When they say, after all I've done for you, your mind doesn't hear manipulation. It hears debt. When they say, you've changed, your heart doesn't hear observation. It hears rejection. And so you scramble to prove your worth again. It's brilliant psychology, and it's dangerous because it turns your empathy into a leash. They don't have to drag you back. You walk yourself there. Let's call it what it is. Emotional dependency disguised as love. You get addicted to the relief that comes when they finally smile again, when they finally forgive you, when the storm passes. That relief feels like peace, but it's not peace. It's permission. And that cycle, guilt, reassurance, relief, is exactly what keeps you stuck. You think you're healing the relationship, but what you're really doing is reinforcing their power over your peace. So I want you to remember this. Anyone who uses guilt as a bridge to get closer to you is not trying to meet you, they're trying to manage you. And the first step out of covert control is not confrontation, it's awareness. Because once you can name it, you can interrupt it. And once you can interrupt it, you can take your power back in 5 seconds flat. That's where we're headed next. We're going to break down the exact emotional hooks, the language, the phrases, the guilt traps that pull you into their story and out of your own. Now let's talk about the part that really messes with your head, the language. Because covert control doesn't sound like control. It sounds like pain. It sounds like disappointment. It sounds like love that's been wounded. But underneath those words, there's strategy. Here are a few of the most common lines that people use when they're trying to pull you back under their emotional control. And I want you to listen, not just with your ears, but with your body. Because the moment you hear one of these, you'll feel it, that knot in your stomach, that twinge of guilt, that instinct to make it better. Let's start with this one. After everything I've done for you, you know that one, don't you? It's not a question. It's a verdict. They're not asking for appreciation. They're reminding you of your debt. This phrase is emotional accounting. It's saying you owe me your compliance because I once gave you my kindness. And the truth is, love doesn't issue invoices. Then there's this one. You've changed. It sounds so simple, but inside that statement is a dagger wrapped in nostalgia. What they really mean is, you stopped letting me control you. They frame your growth as betrayal because your independence breaks their illusion of power. How about, I just needed someone who cared? You hear that and your heart breaks. But think about it. If you truly cared, and you do, they wouldn't have to weaponize that need. Healthy people ask for support. Manipulative people demand it through guilt. That line isn't about their loneliness. It's about testing your loyalty. Another one, I guess I'm the bad guy again. Listen to me, that's not humility. That's reverse blame. It's designed to make you defend them instead of holding them accountable. It flips the story so that suddenly you feel cruel for setting a boundary. And once you start defending their intentions, the focus shifts away from their behavior and back onto your guilt. And finally, the classic, you're overreacting. Every time someone says that, what they're really saying is, your emotions are inconvenient to my control. It's not a statement about your response. It's a way to erase your reality so theirs feels safe again. Each of these phrases carries the same hidden message. Stay small, stay quiet, stay in line. And the reason they work so well is because they're wrapped in emotion. You don't see manipulation, you see pain. You don't hear control, you hear confusion. But what you're really hearing is a carefully trained language of guilt. So the next time one of those sentences lands in your lap, don't rush to explain or defend yourself. Just notice the pattern. Notice how your chest tightens, how your thoughts race to fix. That's your nervous system being hijacked, not your conscience waking up. This is the moment where awareness becomes armor, because when you can name the game, it stops being won. And now that you can hear the emotional hooks for what they really are, it's time to look at the next part of the puzzle, why you keep falling for them. You know what's fascinating? When you really look at this pattern, the guilt, the phrases, the pull, you start to realize something that changes everything. It's not that you're foolish for falling for it. It's that your wiring makes you vulnerable to it. Let me explain. You're built for connection. Your brain is literally designed to notice disconnection and try to repair it. So when someone you care about sighs, goes quiet, withdraws, or says something like, I guess I don't matter anymore, your nervous system lights up. It screams, danger, I'm losing attachment. And before you even think, you move into action. You explain, you apologize, you comfort, you try to close the gap. That's not weakness. That's empathy. That's your humanity doing its job. It's the part of you that knows what it's like to be hurt and never wants anyone else to feel that way. But here's the painful truth. Some people learn how to use that goodness against you. They see your compassion and realize they don't have to change. They just have to look wounded enough for you to do the changing instead. So while you're working to fix what feels broken, they're working to make sure you never stop trying. And this is where covert control becomes personal. Because it doesn't just play with your emotions, it plays with your identity. You start thinking, I'm the understanding one. I'm the patient one. I'm the one who doesn't give up on people. And all of that sounds noble until you realize that the same story keeping you kind is keeping you captive. It's a powerful psychological loop. They give you little bursts of affection, a kind text, a warm tone, a few calm days, just enough to make you think, see, they care. Then they pull away again, and your brain goes into panic mode. That's called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same system that keeps gamblers at slot machines. You never know when the reward is coming, so you keep investing more. And before long, you're not staying in the relationship for love anymore. You're staying for the moments that feel like relief. You mistake peace for permission, silence for safety, and guilt for love. But here's the truth you need to hear. You don't need their approval to prove you're good. You don't need to earn back what was freely yours to begin with. Your worth, your calm, your voice. Let that sink in for a second. You can't control their pattern. You never could, but you can interrupt yours. And that interruption, that tiny moment where you stop the automatic guilt response, that's where your freedom begins. This is where the 5-second rule comes in. That simple countdown isn't just for getting out of bed or making decisions. It's a tool for reclaiming your mind from emotional manipulation. It's the bridge between awareness and action. So next, I'm going to show you exactly how to use it, not to argue, not to fight, but to take back the space between their words and your reaction. Because in that space, that's where your power lives. Let's talk about the pause, that sacred space between what they say and how you respond. That space is everything. That space is where your power has been hiding. Most of us live our entire lives reacting to emotion instead of responding to reality. Someone implies we've disappointed them, and boom, our mind goes into overdrive. You start justifying, defending, explaining. Your body floods with cortisol, your heart races, your brain scrambles to restore peace. And by the time it's over, you're exhausted, resentful, and more entangled than before. That's where the 5-second rule changes the game. You've heard me talk about it before. Count backward from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and move. It's deceptively simple, but here's why it works. Counting backward activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, reason, and control. It pulls you out of your limbic reactive state, the one that says, fix it now, and puts you back in charge. So when that message comes, I guess I just don't matter anymore, or that sigh cuts through the room, and you feel your chest tighten, here's what you do. Stop, feel it, and then quietly count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It doesn't sound like much, but in those 5 seconds, your brain resets. You move from guilt to grounding, from autopilot to awareness. Now, pair that pause with this mantra. Their feeling is not my fault. Their silence is not my signal. You say it internally as you breathe. And what happens next is subtle but profound. The hook loses power. You're not ignoring them. You're reclaiming your choice. You're saying, I can feel your pain without surrendering my peace. Because the truth is, you don't owe anyone your immediate emotional response. You don't have to rush to comfort someone just because they're uncomfortable. You don't have to explain your boundaries to make them valid. That's what the 5-second rule gives you space. 5 seconds of space between their manipulation and your mind. 5 seconds to choose calm over chaos. 5 seconds to remember who you are. Here's the part most people miss. The 5-second rule isn't about silence, it's about sovereignty. It's about deciding that your emotions are yours to command, not theirs to control. So the next time guilt grabs your throat, use it like a mental switch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I choose peace. That's the moment you stop dancing to their rhythm and start walking to your own. And once you've built that pause, you'll be ready for the next step, learning how to respond, not react. Because silence isn't the only answer. Sometimes you need words, calm, clear, short sentences that hold the line without feeding the fire. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Now that you've learned how to pause, here's the next step: speaking from peace instead of panic. Because silence can protect you, but language can anchor you. And if you're dealing with someone who thrives on emotional reaction, your words become your boundaries. Here's the secret: the goal isn't to win, it's not to convince them you're right or prove they're wrong. The goal is to stay rooted while their storm passes, to respond from clarity, not chaos. Let's talk about how to do that. When someone hits you with a guilt line, after everything I've done for you, or I guess I just don't matter anymore, your instinct is to defend yourself. You want to say, that's not fair, or you're twisting my words. But the moment you do, you're back in the web, because defending yourself keeps the conversation on their terms. You're explaining your goodness to someone who's already decided to doubt it. So instead of defending, you redirect. You use what I call the reversal script: short, calm phrases that acknowledge emotion without feeding the manipulation. Try this: I hear that you're upset. That's it. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way. Not, I didn't mean to hurt you. Just, I hear you. You validate that they're speaking, not that they're right. Or this one: I understand that's how you see it. That line builds a wall of calm between their perception and your truth. It says, you can own your feelings, but they don't get to rewrite my reality. And if the guilt keeps coming, the sighs, the silence, the martyr act, say this to yourself before you say anything else: I'm not required to participate in every emotional scene I'm invited to. That's not cruelty. That's emotional self-respect. Now, if the person pushes harder, oh, so now you don't care? You don't rise to it. You stay steady. You say, that's not true, and I'm not going to argue. Then stop talking. Let the silence do the work. Because here's the truth: every time you over-explain, you feed the illusion that your peace depends on their approval. Every time you defend, you reinforce their control. But when you stay calm and concise, the game collapses. Think of guilt like a rope. When they throw it to you and you start tugging back, you're both tied up. When you drop the rope, they fall into their own imbalance. So drop the rope. Speak lightly. Use few words. Let your tone be the boundary. You don't need sharp edges to be strong. You don't need volume to be heard. You just need consistency, that quiet, steady tone that says, I know what's mine to carry, and this isn't it. And yes, they might get louder when you stop feeding the hook. They might accuse, withdraw, play the victim again. That's normal. That's the withdrawal of control, not the loss of love. It's the system realizing the supply is gone. And that brings us to what happens next: the crash cycle. Because when you stop reacting, the person who's been feeding off your responses doesn't vanish. They panic. And if you don't understand what that panic looks like, you'll mistake it for proof that you're the problem. So let's talk about it. When you stop reacting, everything changes. And not just for you. The person who once fed on your guilt suddenly loses their emotional supply. And let me tell you, they feel it. At first, they'll be confused. You're not responding the way you used to. You're not rushing in to fix it. You're not apologizing for things you didn't do. To them, it feels like the ground beneath their control is cracking. And that's when the crash cycle begins. They might start small, testing the rope: a sigh here, a long silence, maybe a passive-aggressive comment. Oh, you've really changed. And when that doesn't work, they'll turn up the volume. They'll play the victim. They'll tell stories where you're the villain. They'll say you've become cold, distant, ungrateful. They're not trying to understand you. They're trying to restore the balance of control. And this is the moment most people break. Because that guilt, it rushes back in. You start wondering, am I being too harsh? Am I shutting down? No, you're not. You're growing up emotionally. You're no longer letting manipulation define love. Here's what's really happening. They're going through withdrawal. They're addicted to being your emotional center. For years, they've relied on your reactions, your apologies, your reassurance, your energy to regulate themselves. Now that it's gone, they feel empty. And instead of facing that emptiness, they reach for the only drug they know, your attention. So when they escalate, remember this truth. Their panic is not your cue to return. It's their reckoning with reality. The illusion of control is breaking, and it's supposed to feel uncomfortable. This is the moment to hold steady. This is where the old version of you, the fixer, the pleaser, the peacekeeper, will want to come rushing back. Don't, because if you cave here, the lesson resets. You teach them that all they have to do is turn up the guilt, and you'll return to the role they built for you. You can have compassion for their struggle without making it your assignment to solve. You can wish them peace without sacrificing your own. And when the dust settles, when the silence finally stretches longer than it ever has, you'll notice something miraculous. The world doesn't fall apart. You don't lose yourself. You find yourself. That's the beginning of real peace. When you realize you don't need to chase calm anymore because you've become it. And that moment, right there, is where healing begins, the breaking of the loop. So now that you understand what happens when you stop playing, let's talk about how to make sure you never get pulled back into the game again. Let's talk about how to break the guilt approval loop for good and rebuild trust in yourself. So you've stopped reacting. You've weathered the crash. And now comes the most important part, reprogramming your mind so you don't fall back into the guilt approval loop. Because this isn't just about learning to ignore someone else's manipulation. It's about healing the part of you that equated guilt with love and approval with safety. Let's go deeper. When you were younger, you probably learned that being good meant keeping the peace. You learned that love was something you earned through kindness, through patience, through silence. And that's where the pattern began. Every time someone was upset, you asked yourself, what did I do wrong? You became the emotional janitor, cleaning up messes you didn't make just to feel secure again. That conditioning didn't come from weakness, it came from survival. You thought harmony meant safety. And for a while, it did. But now you're an adult, and that same reflex is costing you your peace. Here's the truth you need to accept. You don't owe anyone your constant reassurance to prove you care. You don't have to feel guilty for someone else's discomfort. And you don't need their approval to validate your worth. Let me say that again, because I know part of you still resists it. You don't need their approval to validate your worth. When you stop chasing approval, something incredible happens. You start trusting your own perception again. You start believing yourself when you feel disrespected. You stop second-guessing your boundaries. And that's when real self-worth starts to take root. Here's a small but powerful exercise to rewire that pattern. Take out your journal or open the Notes app on your phone and write down 3 recent moments when you felt guilty for saying no. Now ask yourself, what emotion did I ignore to keep the peace? What truth did I swallow to avoid tension? What did it cost me? You'll start to see the pattern in black and white. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Then write this sentence underneath it, your new baseline belief: I am not responsible for managing other people's feelings. I am responsible for protecting my peace. Say it out loud every day if you have to. Because this isn't about becoming hard or cold, it's about becoming whole. It's about realizing that peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. And when you stop making guilt your compass, you find direction again. You'll know you're free when guilt shows up, and you don't rush to silence it, you just observe it. You'll know you've healed when someone tries to pull you into an argument, and you simply say, I love you, but I'm not available for this. You'll know you've grown when your first instinct isn't to fix, it's to breathe. This is what breaking the loop looks like. Not fireworks, not confrontation, but quiet alignment. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on anyone's reaction because it's built from the inside out. And when you start living from that kind of peace, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing their approval and start honoring your truth. You stop trying to be understood and start standing in understanding. That's the foundation for lasting freedom. And from there, you'll be ready for the final shift, the one that seals this new chapter for good. Because the real victory isn't about cutting someone out. It's about moving forward in a way that keeps your peace intact no matter who you face. Let's finish this together. Let's bring this home. When you began listening to this, you might have thought this was a talk about manipulation or narcissism or other people's behavior. But you see now, this has always been about you, about the moment you decided that your peace was worth protecting, about the moment you stopped trying to fix what you didn't break. So let's go back to where we started. That one line, I guess I just don't matter anymore. Before, it used to pierce right through you. It used to send you spiraling into guilt and explanation and apology. Now, it's just words because you understand what's underneath it: fear, control, longing for relevance. And you understand what's inside you: peace, boundaries, compassion that doesn't self-destruct. That's power. Not the loud, cinematic kind, not the kind that demands to be seen, but the quiet kind, the kind that hums under your skin when you choose calm over chaos. Listen to me. You don't need to prove your goodness anymore. You've done enough explaining, defending, and overgiving to fill a lifetime. You've earned the right to stand still and let your actions speak for you. The truth is, the people who love you won't need to guilt you to keep you close. They won't weaponize their wounds to keep you in orbit. Real connection doesn't require performance. It thrives in honesty, respect, and the freedom to be imperfect without fear of punishment. So from this moment forward, I want you to remember something. Peace is not the prize you win at the end of fixing everyone else. Peace is what you build when you stop trying to control what was never yours. And when someone says you've changed, smile, because you've stopped living for validation and started living from truth. You've stopped equating guilt with love. You've stopped mistaking chaos for connection. You've started choosing yourself not in selfishness, but in sanity. That's what growth looks like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and strong. It's walking away from manipulation without bitterness. It's refusing to play small so others can stay comfortable. And when that guilt tries to creep back in, when your body remembers the old dance, you already know what to do. Stop, count it down. Wu, si, san, R-E. And choose peace. Because peace isn't found in their apology. It's found in your decision to no longer need one. You've learned how to recognize covert control. You've learned how to stop reacting. You've learned how to rebuild trust in yourself. And now you know the only approval that ever mattered was your own. So go live from that. Let the silence fall where it needs to. Let time reveal what's real. And never forget, relevance fades, manipulation dies, but authenticity endures. Because in the end, the real freedom isn't when they change. It's when you stop waiting for them to